Right. Our next speaker is a Welsh Assembly member and the newly elected leader of UKIP in Wales. Since being elected, he has immediately sunk his teeth into the new role and hit headlines with his no-nonsense interviews and direct answers, something extremely uncommon in politicians nowadays. Please join me in welcoming Gareth Bennett.
Thanks. Good afternoon, conference. It's nice to be here. I hope you've enjoyed the day so far, and I hope you'll enjoy the speech. By the way, my name's Gareth Bennett, and if you don't enjoy it, my name's Henry Bolton. Now, there were a few mentions this morning of our old friend Henry, or General Henry, as I often prefer to call him. As Rhys Coombs and others made clear from their contribution this morning, he wasn't much of a general. But one thing that wasn't mentioned earlier on was that in his first significant speech after becoming leader of UKIP, he spoke of his ability to exterminate badgers with his bare hands, which I thought was an intriguing claim. And it was certainly an interesting entree into the world of politics. But there was a lot of things going on at the time. There was Brexit, there were the rape gangs that we've been hearing about just now from Alan Craig, there was the ongoing issue of political correctness versus free speech, which has been a consistent theme today. So I wondered why Henry was so intent on showing his macho credentials with this supposed ability to exterminate badgers by throttling them with his bare hands. I suppose, in a way, it showed us the significance of the political career that was about to unfold. And I suppose the other thing is it's taught me that when we speak about badgers, it's never a black and white issue. Now, if I can just go back to those three things, those three issues I just mentioned. Obviously, it's coming towards the end of the day. Lots of people have said many significant things today, so lots of this has already been covered. So I apologise if there is an element of repetition. But Brexit was the first thing that I mentioned, and obviously the narrative glue that held us together in UKIP, the reason why we all came together, wherever our beliefs on other issues, was Brexit and a desire to be free from the European Union. So I suppose with Brexit, we have to look at, will we have a Brexit? When will we have a Brexit? What sort of Brexit will we have? So let's just have a quick look at those three issues. Will we have a Brexit? Yes, we will have a kind of Brexit. When will we have it? Well, who knows? Because the end of the transitional periods, and many of them are being mentioned, are now receding further and further into the future. So it's as clear as mud at the moment how long the transitions will continue for and when we will actually leave the European Union. And finally, what sort of Brexit will we have? I think that there is a clear answer on that we all know, and that is that it's going to be a botched job. And the Brexit that we get from Theresa May and Ollie Robbins and these civil servants and those other Remainers that are running this show, what we're going to get is something that isn't going to be satisfactory to the vast majority of people who voted to leave in the 2016 referendum. And I think so far we haven't really had, UKIP as a party hasn't really had any electoral gain from winning the referendum, because we've been in this perilous position since then whereby the country is polarised between two groups, one of which wants to leave, another of which is determined to remain. There are people in the middle who are getting fed up with the whole thing. But as it goes on, it's becoming clearer and clearer that it is a very perilous position. We don't know if in any meaningful sense we are going to get this Brexit, which is what millions of people voted for. It was the largest democratic exercise in the history of the UK. So we do also have to remember that in 2015, the year before the referendum, when UKIP was probably at its most popular as a political party in the UK, we got just less than 13% in that general election. Of course, in the Brexit referendum a year later, 52% of people voted to leave. So that's a big gap. And I think that there might be encouragement, because once Brexit is seen to be over, the deal, once the deal has been done and people start to realise that they've been sold down the river, perhaps this may lead to more and more people going back to UKIP, or people who never considered voting UKIP coming over to UKIP once they realise what a pathetic charade the whole series of negotiations has been since we won the referendum. Now, Brexit is only one thing, of course. I don't think we can just talk about Brexit. Rape gangs was the second thing that I mentioned. I've slightly had the carpet pulled, the rug pulled from under me by Alan Graham's very forceful speech that we had 10 minutes ago, because he spoke about this quite a lot. So some of the points I'm making certainly dovetail with what Alan was saying. I was going to say, what can we say about the systematic rape of young British women by particularly one ethnic group? And what are we allowed to say about this? And how do we refer to this? And I suppose, first of all, are we allowed to say that these were Asian men, largely Asian men? But then when you think about that, that's not a very good description, is it? Because Asian covers a lot of different ethnicities, and certainly that would be stigmatising Indian Hindus who had nothing to do with this. It would be stigmatising Sikhs who had nothing to do with this. It would be stigmatising Chinese people who had nothing to do with this. This was a systematic series of rapes in different towns, multiple rapes in different towns across the UK, as we've been hearing, and it was largely a product of the Pakistani community. So how much can we talk about this? Can we point out that this was largely the Pakistani community? Can we say that we need to bring the full force of law upon the perpetrators and leave it at that? Or do we need to examine the fact that a small but significant number of young Pakistani men were involved in this? And can we start to examine what it is in the Pakistani culture, in the Pakistani communities, that fosters this kind of behaviour? Are we allowed to talk about these things? And I think we do need to start talking about these things in UKIP, and I think that Gerard Batten has been correct as the leader in wanting to go into these areas, and Alan Craig has been correct in what he said as our spokesman on the families, but as he said earlier, he's been given responsibility for speaking in these areas. I know it gets people anxious and it gets people nervous when we talk about these things, and that's what proves that we do need to be talking about it. Now, the third thing I mentioned was the ongoing issue of free speech versus political correctness. We had Alan Williams this morning. He kindly mentioned my ban from the Welsh Assembly a year ago for speaking on the subject of transgender rights and speaking against the aims and objectives of the transgender movement. And his speech told us a lot about the details of the madness of the transgender movement. And Alan was very correct in linking this to another systematic form of child abuse which is going on at the moment. And it's part of a pattern that's building up, which I think is actually an attempt by elements in the state. David Curtin mentioned this as well, about bringing these elements back under control. I can't remember the exact phrase he used. But it's actually an attempt by the state, or elements of the state, to nationalise childhood and adolescence. And this attempted nationalisation takes place, it manifests itself in different ways. For instance, the Scottish Parliament have passed something in recent years called the Named Person Act, which aims to interject a named person in between the parents, the birth parents of a child and the child. And it's very sinister. And if you don't know anything about the Named Person Act, I would advise you to Google it and have a look at what the Named Person Act actually is, and you can judge for yourselves how malevolent you think that act actually is. In the Welsh Assembly, we have legislation about to come forward, which is a smacking ban, and it's an attempt to criminalise parents for smacking their misbehaving children. Now, of course, no one in UKIP is going to be so daft as to advocate that parents should be able to beat their kids with leather straps or canes or anything like that. But clearly, if kids at a young age are misbehaving, they have to be given deterrence, and they have to understand the limits of their behaviour. And often kids behave worse later on if they haven't been disciplined at an early age. We talked about this in the Cardiff branch recently, and we had a show of hands, and most of us had been physically chastised as kids. So it's rather ludicrous that now a large proportion of voters in Wales are about to be criminalised for the act of chastising their children. So I think that that's sinister. I think it's Stalinist. David Curtin said about the stars in the German police force and how we're now heading to a system where we have lots of snoopers, lots of people who are akin to a sort of secret police. And I think that this smacking ban smacks of Stalinism, because what's going to happen? We're going to have kids testifying to the state against their own parents. That's happened in Stalin's Russia in the 50s. We're going to have neighbours testifying against their next door neighbours. I think this is utterly sinister. Now, another way in which we have this manifestation of the nationalisation of childhood is if you look at the education system. Because we now have kids getting sent to nursery school at a young age. Then they go through the education system. We've had a massive expansion of the university system, so that now lots and lots of kids are going through universities and they're not leaving the education system until they're 21. I think it was Joe Simon who touched on this earlier. Oh, it was actually the Flemish chap, sorry. The Flemish chap talked about brainwashing of the state. This brainwashing is now going on from a young age until about the age of 21. And if you think about things like breakfast clubs and after-school clubs, it's actually also taking place over a longer period of the day. We also have homework. So I wonder if UKIP might actually get some electoral benefits from starting off with campaigns against the education system. For instance, could we campaign against homework as a starting point? This could end up with, if we have sex education, which includes transgender nonsense, will we have school gate protests as they had in Peru in recent years? Could this actually end up with a revolt against the whole education system, or could we end up with a move towards the homeschooling system? And if we are going to have these political trends in the UK in the next few years, I think UKIP has to be aware of them and has to be at the forefront of them. We have a lot of nonsense coming from the devolved governments. I mentioned that the Named Person Act came from the Scottish Parliament, the smacking ban is going through the Welsh Assembly. The devolved assemblies of the three outer provinces of the UK, they're very poorly functioning, and I've launched a campaign to have a referendum on the future of these assemblies and parliaments. Those being the Northern Ireland Assembly, the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly. Now David Coburn, we heard from him earlier, he gave a very good presentation by video, I thought, not on the issues that I'm talking about now. But he has been talking recently in his tweets and in his speeches about campaigning for a referendum on the future of the Scottish Parliament. The Northern Ireland UKIP group, I went over there last weekend to Belfast. They passed a motion in favour of a review of the governance of Northern Ireland. Now it's interesting that the Northern Ireland government hasn't even functioned for almost 2 years, and during that period they've had the longest spell of economic growth that they've had in the whole 20 years. they've had the most which proves that you don't need another useless tier of bureaucracy which simply sucks resources from frontline services like housing, health and education and gives it to a whole cosseted class of political bureaucrats who shouldn't even be in post in the first place. Now, of course, this does bring its issues. If you campaign for this kind of thing, it brings its issues, because, of course, we had electoral success in Wales last time around. We got members elected to the Welsh Assembly, and I'm one of them. And I'm now paid a lot of money for being in the Welsh Assembly, so of course I benefited from it. To the extent to which we can broadcast a message from our post in the Welsh Assembly, then UKIP has also benefited from it. So we have to think carefully about what does this mean. Are we actually abolishing our own elected posts, and are we going to have an ever narrowing avenue by which we can communicate to the public through elected office? Because the MEPs are going next May. So what have we got left? We've got now 4 Welsh Assembly members, there were 3 defectors, so there's 4, we had 7 elected, there's 4 of us left, there's 2 guys in the London Assembly. I suppose if you think about it in terms of electoral benefits, there are significant indicators that possibly a quarter of the population of Wales doesn't want devolution. Similar figures in Scotland and Northern Ireland. So it may be that by campaigning against devolution, it may give us another term next time. It may give us some breathing space. And by the time we actually get a referendum on the future of the Welsh Assembly and the other devolved institutions, I suggest in 2024, which will be 25 years of Scotland and Wales being devolved. You probably won't get it in 2024. But if this is a long-running campaign, perhaps it gives us breathing space, perhaps it gives us a raison d'etre in Scottish and Welsh politics and Northern Ireland politics. It may help us actually to get back in. It's a bit like the argument of Nigel Farage when he said we're Turkey's voting for Christmas. He was campaigning, and Gerard was campaigning for Britain to come out of the EU in 1994, and of course it helped UKIP to win seats in the European Parliament by campaigning for Britain to get out of the European Parliament. So by the same measure, we may win seats next time in the Welsh Assembly and even the Scottish Parliament by campaigning to give the people a voice so we can have a referendum on the future of those institutions. So I think that is the way forward. I hope that you will start to think about the issue of devolution. It's obviously, perhaps it impacts more on us in the provinces than it does on England, where the mass of the UKIP membership is. But hopefully you'll have to think about it, because we are having a conversation within the party about this policy. And hopefully after you've had a long time to think about it, you're all intelligent people who would agree with me that we need to change the policy. Another thing that was mentioned today was Tommy Robinson, and that's cropped up quite a lot. I was at the NEC meeting with Ben Walker when we did vote in favour of the motion at the NEC at the UKIP conference. Unfortunately, we didn't end up getting that motion debated. I think we do need to have a proper conversation about bringing Tommy Robinson into the party if he wants to join the party. I think one thing is clear in UKIP, that there is an older demographic. There are many people who like to come to meetings and they like to vent their spleen about a lot of issues, but what we will need going forward is boots on the ground. We may need a blood transfusion in UKIP. We may need less of the wing bags and we may need more of the foot soldiers going forward. And we will need Thanks for coming to the conference today. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thanks for investing your time with UKIP, the only sensible political party. Thank you.